I used to be ashamed of my past and unsure if I'd make it to where I was going. But I knew one thing was for certain. We don't end up where we're going on accident. I've also learned that we can't erase the past or hide from it, but we can learn from it and pass it on to others. So who am I? I'm the definition of a bootstrap girl. Someone who's made the hard choices to pick themselves back up and make something of themselves. And I'm not the only one. My name is Danisha. I'm a mom, a wife, a professor, advocate, queen of my own path, who's overcome abuse, foster care, homelessness, and raising 5 siblings on my own at the age of 24. And eventually I got a PhD. But something that I learned is that I don't know everything. So here on my show, we're going to be bringing in people who know the things that we don't know. Let's get in and learn on the Dr. Danisha Keating Show.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dr. Danisha Keating Show. I am super excited to have Lydia joining us on this episode. This is the table talk conversation that we're going to be having at our kitchen table. What we're doing is we're inviting you to be the fly on the wall who's going to be coming into this conversation between two friends that are trying to understand each other's points of view on a particular situation. Now, this particular topic, I'm going to be honest, we want you to hear everything that we have to say. So I'm going to ask that before you respond, you listen to the entire video and or episode, because if you don't, you're going to not really hear everything we're going to be saying. And normally when this conversation comes up, there is a lot of yelling, screaming, insulting, name calling, and things being thrown at each other. But today we want to actually have this kitchen table conversation on a very important topic. Within both the pro-life movement and the foster care arena, we have been hearing two phrases that are commonly stated as an argument against pro-life choices. This statement is, the foster care system wouldn't exist if abortions were legal. And the second statement is, abortion would prevent children entering into foster care. So Lydia, I'm going to have you respond. What is your reaction when you hear those two statements?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I hear
Absolutely.
those all the time, almost every day. I have the honor of working in the pro-life movement, and I get to engage with pro-choicers on the topic of abortion. And that is one of the most common arguments I hear, that, oh, abortion will solve the foster care system, and we don't want more foster kids going into the broken system, which I always tell them I agree that it's broken. And I always share with them the reason that I became pro-life is actually because of my foster sister. I grew up believing the same narrative that pro-choicers do, that it's about women's choices, it's her body. Didn't know it was a baby in the womb, even though I was raised in a pro-life family, until I was in high school. And people were talking about abortion. I was just kind of going along with it, didn't really have any input until someone said, Lydia, we need abortion because foster kids like your sister would be better off aborted. And I froze. And although I leaned pro-choice at the time, I heard that and I immediately knew something was wrong with the pro-abortion narrative, that there was no way that the best thing for my little sister was for her to be aborted rather than given a chance, because her life is beautiful. She is one of the most important people in my life. And so I went home and I did research, and I came to the realization that science says that's a life in the womb. And that by having an abortion, you're not preventing a life from suffering. You are causing a human life to suffer by being violently killed in the womb. And that we can do so much better for those foster kids than telling them that they should have been aborted. And so a lot of our pro-life laws that we pass actually work to give funding towards fixing the foster care system, because I will be the first to agree that we could do a lot to help foster children. Especially as my foster sister, we were supposed to adopt her and there was a bunch of problems, didn't end up being able to. We didn't see her for 6 years and finally just got to reunite with her this year. And she is doing okay, but she has certainly been through a lot. And so I will absolutely admit that it is definitely a problematic sphere, but at the same time, there's so much better that we could do besides suggesting death as a solution to a broken foster care system.
Right. When has your foster sister heard that statement as well?
I'm not sure. I know she knows very much about my pro-life work. She was actually at my wedding holding pro-life signs. I'm not sure if she personally has. I haven't asked her that, but I know that she sees comments like that on my videos because I've shared about this story, and so she does have to do that quite often. But she actually told me she has 13 biological siblings, actually, and she told me that the reason why her mom had the children is because her biological mom, does not believe in abortion. So that was really crazy to hear as well, that her mom made the courageous decision to choose life in all of those situations. And all the time, I'm very glad that she's here, and she is very loved, and she is going to do amazing things in this world. And I am very glad she's here, despite what she's gone through.
I'm glad she's here too because it's wild. Like on the foster care advocacy side, I have heard these two statements a lot. I'm a former foster youth myself. I raised 5 of my siblings at the age of 24. I
Wow.
like took them in, became their guardian, and someone. So I'm one of 11 kids, and then I have
Wow.
2 additional not half siblings. And someone has said, like, don't you wish your mom would have aborted you? And I was like, no, I wish my parents would have done better. Like, I just wish they would have figured it out. And a lot of the stuff that happened with me, like I recently found out last year, my mom actually told me, I don't have a relationship with her, but she emailed me and was like, here's some things I found out. Foster care goes back 3 generations on my mom's side. So her mom and my great grandma were all in the foster care system. And in my head, I started digging because I was like, okay, maybe my mom should have been forced to get an abortion. Towards the end of her very last couple pregnancies, the doctors started to really push her to that, even to the extent of saying like, oh, well, we did a test and it's likely, not positive, likely that this one will have Down syndrome. You should abort. And that I was 10 or 11. And I was like, oh, hold on. That was way before foster care happened. But I started researching some things last year because a lot of people were saying this in the foster care world. And I remember a moment with my mom where she said, like, I should have got rid of you when I had the chance. And I was probably about 4 or 5 years old. And I remember carrying that for a really long time. And then I talked to a lot of former foster youth, and they're like, do you know how many people have told me that I should have killed myself? Like I should have gone through with suicide, that my parents should have gotten rid of me. And they're weeping in front of me. And I'm like, these statements are damaging to us. And it really does make you feel like you're less than. And so one of the things I looked up, because I shared something on social media and people started to come at it and said, we need abortion because it lessens how many people are in foster care. So in 1970, when abortions were made legal, I actually looked it up and I have it pulled up beside me. According to the Security Act of 1935, they said that actually 500,000 children were in the foster care system in 1970. But as of 2024, when we look at the number, there is over 500,000. It's like 400,000 something, but it keeps going up and down. But there is over 5 million children in kinship care with families. So it has not gotten better, even though abortions are legal. It's gotten a lot worse. And then the system is so damaging, and it's like we're keeping kids in abuse. We're not, and then some of it's neglect, and we're just not teaching parents. It's generational. So what it is a lack of, in my opinion, is it really is a lack of education. Like, how are we helping parents learn how to be parents and not neglectful to their kids? Now, abuse is a whole different thing. Sometimes that's something you can learn. Sometimes that's how the parent reacts. But it is so heartbreaking to stand in front of somebody and they say, hey, Danisha, someone told me that I was better off dead. And I sit back in that statement. And that's where I really started to like awaken to understand, like, people say very rude things and they do it to shut the argument down. And that I don't feel like it's a real point that they're trying to make. So in your experience, when it comes to those statements, how is that stalling out mothers who are wanting to raise their child, but then maybe they're being forced into an abortion by somebody?
Yeah, we know that a majority of women who are having abortions are being under some sort of pressure, whether that is from society, from the baby's father, from their parents, and so absolutely, it is a huge thing that is harming women. They are being pressured into abortion, absolutely, and I think it really stems from this kind of feeling in society that your value doesn't just come from you being a human life. It comes from, oh, how great is your life? How successful are you? And so people make this assumption that, oh, if a child's being born into a difficult situation, or they might be put into foster care, that their life isn't as valuable because it's not up to par with society's expectations. And so we start pressuring women into abortions if we think that child's life isn't going to be perfect. And I think that's a discriminatory stance to have. And I mean, it's the same stance that's been used to justify human rights issues throughout
Right.
history that, oh, not only do you have to be a human to be valuable, but you also have to be a certain race, gender, or a certain disability, or not disabled, or you have to be born into a perfect situation. And so I think it is absolutely very problematic that society has this view on human life, and it is
Mm-hmm.
feel like they need to have an abortion, that it's the merciful thing to do to end that child's life without
Mm.
giving them a chance. And so what we do in the pro-life movement is we come alongside and say, hey, you're not preventing a child from being from coming into existence. You already have a child, you already are a mother, and there is hope for you, and we can be a part of that hope. And we outnumber abortion facilities times 10 with our pro-life centers across the country
Mm.
that give free resources to women. And so the pro-life movement truly cares about human life, both the baby in the womb and the mother. And we think that their value comes from just being a human life, that they don't have to have a perfect life, and what society thinks is perfect. And so
Right.
challenging that narrative that life's value comes from your circumstances, because it absolutely does not.
So then this is not a question that I gave to you, but I know we've actually found in life perfection doesn't exist, even though we try to pretend that it does. But
Yeah.
you're saying that we find that the value comes from our circumstances, not being as a human. So when it comes to, I could imagine, does this statement also get stated like, oh, abortion would be better versus them having a disability or a chromosome issue or whatever? Like, is that also a statement that's being made in arguments? Is it just foster care?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that's one that I hear all the time, more and more common, especially as these cases are coming up in the news a lot about abortion being illegal in cases where the baby is disabled. There are certain places, like, for instance, Iceland. Iceland brags that they've eradicated Down syndrome because they've been aborting 99% of babies with Down syndrome, and they brag about it and act like it's a good thing. In reality, it's absolutely devastating that this is ableism. That's what that is. And I mean, it's
Yeah.
here in America, a majority of babies with Down syndrome are aborted, and I hear all the time when I'm engaging with students on college campuses. I've had disabled students come up to me and say, "Yeah, I think I was better off aborted. My life
Mm.
hard." And it's shocking to hear that. And it just is a reminder of how evil society is, that this narrative, this pro abortion narrative, has caused people to think that because of their circumstances, their life isn't worth living. And I think that's why the pro life movement, it's so important that we continue to remind people that life is beautiful, that you are here for a purpose, that we care about you. While the pro abortion movement might
Mm.
preach the opposite, there are people that care about you and think your life is beautiful and worth living. And I always make sure to tell them that. And I mean, as someone who knows a lot of disabled people in my life and in my family, even, I absolutely like see the value in their lives just because they have difficult circumstances. And so I always bring that up. I'm like, hey, first of all, that's completely ableist what you just said, but also look at this amazing life. Look at this amazing person that was able to rise above difficult circumstances and have an amazing life. And again, I don't think we should be the ones to determine what an amazing life is. I think every life
Mm.
is
Mhm.
amazing. And so absolutely, that is something I hear all the time, and we definitely have to combat that message.
That's wild. It's just wild to hear some of the arguments that come out of it, and with these statements. So we hear how it kind of stalls out. Like, in what ways does it stall out a mom reaching out for help when they hear these statements? Like, maybe they have two kids and they just found out they're pregnant again and they're struggling financially. What if they hear these statements? What are some of the things that maybe you've heard them say, like, this is why I need to do this?
Yeah. I think honestly, the biggest thing for me is they call themselves the pro-choice movement, but they're removing any sort of choice from women with this message that, hey, abortion is your best thing. The baby's life is going to be miserable, and they feel like they might even be doing what's best for the baby. At that point, that killing them is somehow better. That's how much our society has pretty much like brainwashed women. They hide the ultrasound from women when they go and get an abortion, so they can't even humanize the baby. They think they're preventing a life from being brought into society. And so they kind of remove the choice from the women with this messaging. And I think that's very dangerous and harmful to women that want to
Mm-hmm.
choose life and feel like they can't. And so that's why we're out there in front of abortion facilities engaging with women saying, hey, you do have other choices, you have other options. Because a majority of the time when I've worked with women who are seeking out abortion, there is at least something in their mind that says, wait, I don't know if I want to do this. I'm feeling pressure into it by something. And so absolutely, I think that this argument that children are better off aborted than put into foster care or adopted or put into difficult circumstances, it's making women feel like they don't even have a choice and that they are a person even if they choose life. And it's very sad, and it's something that we're absolutely trying to provide resources to prevent.
I love that. Now, how would you say that this, I want you to take this question first, and then I'll kind of talk how I've seen it stall out, but how does it stall out the foster care conversations when we hear people say these things and they come into the argument and they say this almost like a bomb and then they drop out and you're just like, okay, that happened. But how does it stall out the foster care, like fixing the foster care issues?
Yeah, absolutely. Abortion is just a great excuse to not actually do anything to fix a broken foster care system. And I think that's something we hear all the time in the pro-life movement. They'll say, "Oh, you're only pro-life when it's a baby in the womb. You don't care about them when they're in the foster care system." And I'm like, that's not true. A lot of our pro-life laws are working to fix and fund the foster care system. In my state of North Carolina, we passed a pro-life law in 2023, summer of 2023. I think, maybe 2024. I can't remember. And
one of those years.
who knows what day it is anymore right now. So the law was to end abortion after 12 weeks, but it also provided millions of dollars of funding towards pregnancy centers, towards the foster care system, towards adoption. And pro-choicers, they tried to veto the law, and thankfully we rode the governor's veto, and we still were thankfully able to pass that law. But the pro-life movement is absolutely doing so much to try to help the foster care system and just support families. And the pro-choice movement is basically saying, oh, let's just kill the children instead of actually trying to help them. And it's this kind of easy way out. Instead of actually doing, I mean, I'll admit it's hard work. And since we live in a broken world, like, it is pretty much impossible to make any system perfect, but there is a lot we can do. And absolutely the pro-abortion movement is just shutting that work down by suggesting abortion as a solution.
Yeah, and it's like on my side, what I think it's doing is like we're not even getting, like, I hear that and I feel like the conversation ends. Like, I don't feel like we actually get invited into the room, like as a former foster youth, to say, like, how can we, like, Danisha, come into this room with me and talk about ways that we can help the foster youth that are in it, because we see a lot of people praise foster parents, but like we're starting to just now, like in the last 5 years, really bring in former foster youth for advocacy that say, this is what happened. This is, we hear Paris Hilton's at the Capitol and a couple former foster youth, but then it's like, okay, well, what about, like my situation where I'm raising my siblings? I got like, I'm just going to try not to deep dive, but recap is that like I got $680 total from my state for assistance for taking in 5 of my siblings, but that was based off my income. So that wasn't a foster youth allocation. They never told me I could get licensed as a foster parent. I didn't find that out until 2023. And that was already after everyone aged out at 2021. So it made it really hard to go through what I was just focusing on school and trying to be like, let me see what I can do, and switching jobs every other year, just trying to make more money because there was no assistance for me. And then to find out after that I was blocked in care. So me trying to speak up and me trying to even get into the rooms with people to say, hey, this is what happened. We need to be better with kinship care. People have blocked that because they're like, no, we're fighting this agenda. Like, we're fighting this situation. But then like what I feel is like when I'm walking into a room, I get that comment and it's like, we're not even talking about abortion. Like, this is not the conversation for the room, because abortion is talking about when they're in the womb and how to help mothers. Foster care is talking about the child that is inside the system who needs support, love, and care from all sides. And so it's literally shut down conversations when I'm the presenter and being like, this is how we can help foster care. And then all of a sudden there's this argument happening in the room. And I'm like, hey guys, like, that is not the topic for today. That is for a different day. But these are 2 separate conversations that are multifaceted. Multiple issues are happening, but they do bleed into each other at points. But I feel like when someone makes that statement, it is to just try to get people to shut up. And it's exhausting because it's just like, we are not going to help people in foster care if we can't say, hey, that conversation is not for today. Like, that conversation is a conversation we can have, but that is not what we're trying to fix right now with this situation. Because even in foster care, there's like kinship care. That's a whole different route of issues going on. Foster care. And then there's group homes and runaways and all this other stuff. And it kind of feels like when we start to bring in and say, well, it's too complicated, it's too hard, we just kind of shove foster youth back into a room and say, like, just deal with it and figure it out yourself and hope you make it. And that's where it's so frustrating. So frustrating sometimes to have these conversations because there's always like multiple people in the room yelling. And so I've watched videos and I'm like, nope. Like, but not for me. I'm good. But then I'm like, I need to do my part as a former foster youth to say, hey, these things are not okay. Things like reunification at all costs is not helping foster youth. It's not helping children who are being re-entered into abuse just so that the counties can have a high reunification number. And so when you talked about like the laws that you guys are putting into place helping fund foster care, what do you mean by that? Because I think people are like, oh, it's just to keep the system alive. And that's not, I don't think that that's what you meant.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, we could go on forever about how to fix the foster care system. And I think, honestly,
Right.
you're better equipped to answer that than I am. But yeah, no, I absolutely agree that, I mean, as someone who has experienced issues within my family trying to do the foster to adopt program, it's just a very hard situation, especially for children that are just being bounced around all the time.
Yes.
And so I think absolutely we need to put that funding towards finding a better way to help those children so that it doesn't feel so, it just is really sad to see that happening all the time.
It's a whiplash. That's all it is. That's what it feels like. Every foster parent I've talked to, foster youth, adoptee, everybody's like, it's whiplash. Like, that's what it just feels like daily. And I'm like,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
absolutely. And I think a lot of also the funding that we're allocating to is helping families in general, so that we don't even have to get to a situation where where children are being put in foster care, because we're supporting families and really helping in that situation as well. So we offer parenting classes, just resources. We really come along. We provide and completely free at our pregnancy and parenting. We really come alongside, pray with the families, but also offer classes and other resources as well. So that's outside of funding the foster care system, but that's something the pro-life is specifically doing as well. So I think that's a more of a preventative measure also, but goes along hand in hand for sure with it. But yeah, I think in the foster care system, we could go on forever about ways to doing it. And we need to kind of find new approaches, because I think we're kind of stuck on the same ideas and systems. And I think there are new things that we could be doing to kind of help children in a new way. But obviously it all takes money, no matter what we're trying to do to fix it.
Right.
So
yeah.
I do think definitely funding is a huge part of it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you probably have better ideas than I do, because I know you have a lot more experience with it as well.
I think it's hard because it really is case by case. And I think we need to get to a point of looking at it case by case, because there are parents out there who it's neglect because they don't have the money, because they're trying to work and they can't get a babysitter. Then there are situations of full abandonment where the parent is just gone and it's like that child is not safe. But in my own story, we were like, I found out our abuse stemmed is I thought it was 15. I was 2. And nobody did anything until I was 15. But then even so, it was all support for the parents and making sure they had what they needed. But you literally look at my file of the pages you can see. There's out of 422 pages, you can only see 35. And they're kind of like still redacted, but it looked like a custody battle, and CPS was the mitigator. And it was like, that should have never happened. Foster care system should have supported me and my siblings and like protected us, but they became the mediator between the parents. And that's really dangerous because there were so many types of abuses happening, but they were labeled as if it was kind of like, oh, it's just neglect. It's just a little bit of not having food. And it's like, no, like we should have been taken a lot faster. We should not have been put back. If it was like, they basically said like, well, it's not safe for Danisha, but it's safe for the other kids. It's like, that doesn't make sense to me. If it's not safe for one kid, it's not safe for all kids. But then you do have where it's just educational disparity. Like the person doesn't know how to manage money and they need a case by case where it's like, okay, you need money management so that you can buy groceries, or it's like, you're just not making enough. Here's the support to get those groceries. Here, let me show you how to do the application. But what we do is we just umbrella term everything, and we say, here, we're just going to treat every person as like kind of best case scenario, but then like we have some kids even where it's like there's no abuse prevalent and the kid got taken away because of a upset grandparent, and that kid was like there's no abuse, and they find it as null, but that kid stayed in foster care. So it's like, it's why it just, we sit back and we're like, we need to look at this case by case, and we
Yep.
need to stop umbrella terming everything just to reunify, to have a high reunification number.
I absolutely
But
agree with that.
yeah, it's like we need case by case management, like not just like what you feel like in the moment. But I think it's really hard to even get to that conversation because everyone's like, well, everybody's story is different, and I'm like, yes. So why don't we look at it case by case? Like, why can't we say, okay, here's the more severe cases, these ones need to be taken out. Here's the one where they just need that management. Let's put them with organizations that can help provide those supplies for them. And that's not happening in every single situation. And like I talked to a foster parent, and she's like, we're a triangle. It's supposed to be a triangle where it's like the kid is the focus, there's the parent support, the foster parent support, and the caseworker is managing this triangle to make sure that child is safe. But what we often do is we kind of take the child out of it, and it becomes just this battle between the two.
Mhm.
And I'm like, that's how my situation was. So it's really hard because it's just a lot, and we do need money. We need more money, but we need people willing to also change how the system is going. And I heard her name's Angela Tucker, and she said, you guys, we are the system. We keep blaming this far off system, but we are the people who exist today. That means we are the system, and so we have to change it. And that's what my hope is in 2025, is that we start to actually change what's happening, not change the narrative of being able to talk about it, but actually action to change it.
Yeah.
So the last question I want to ask before we just kind of like wrap this up is, if you were approached by someone and they told you that they, one, should have been aborted, or they were told they should have been aborted, or they were better off dead, what would you tell them?
hmm Yeah, first of all, I tell them that I'm glad that they're here, that I can already see value. Usually, just from talking by people, I can see that they have compassion, empathy, that they want to have this genuine conversation, that they're willing to open up about a really terrible thought about that. So I usually treat them like, hey, I already see value in you. You're clearly a compassionate person. You're opening up with me and having a genuine conversation, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate you for being willing to do that. And I believe that your life has purpose, that you have talents, and likely passions, that you're here for a reason. And I offer them help if sometimes I find that some of these people who are saying these things are saying them because maybe they're depressed or struggling with suicide in some situations. And so
Yeah.
I do offer them more advanced help in those cases. But I think it really does come from, hey, like, society might be telling you this, but you are here for a purpose. And that purpose isn't just to be some idea of society's success and to have money and to have the perfect family life and everything. Hey, life isn't perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. And we don't have to fit an ideal standard. I believe that God cares about all of us and that we're all here for a reason. And I really care about you, and I'm sorry that you've been told that. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is that society is to blame for telling people this pro-abortion narrative that they think is helping women and giving women choices is being used to hurt people who are born and are told that they were better off aborted. And it's very sad. And I've actually had pro-choicers realize that and thankfully be like, oh, wait, you're right. Me saying that is very damaging to foster disabled people. And so absolutely, I see people change their minds all the time because of this topic. And so definitely just showing them that their value does not come from their circumstances. It comes from them just being a human being created in the image of God, that is here for a purpose.
I think like one of the things that I wish I was told, but like that I tell people now that have told me this, is just like, you deserved better, and I am sorry that that was even said to you. But you, like you said, like, you have a purpose here, and you might not understand that just yet, but you should have never been told that, because you are amazing. And I don't know you, but I want to get to know you. And if you weren't here, like, I don't know what your life's going to look like, and I know that that might feel hard to have to like struggle through, but that should have never been said to you. That was not for you to carry. And I feel like that it's hard, because it's like I've been told that myself, and that is the whisper that comes into me sometimes, into my ears, of like, you're not enough, that you're not this, you don't deserve this. And it's like, wow, what would have happened if someone breathes life into me. And one of the studies that I found, like, heard of, was these, I think it was elementary school kids, but there was two trees, and they put both of these trees into different rooms. The one was under sunlight, and they spoke positive stuff to this one tree, and like only ever said good things around it. But then in this other room, they had this tree that they spoke negativity to. They cussed around it. They did not say nice things. The tree that did not have nice things said to it died, and the other one thrived. And so this study was like, this teacher was like, hey guys, I want you to understand, like, the way that you speak to these trees will either cause life or death. Now think about what you do to each other. And I sat back and I was like, wow, like, think about what we do to each other is that when we want to win an argument, or we're mad or angry, or we feel like our life sucks, we try to tear other people down. And I think part of that comes to this pro-choice, pro-life movement is like, we're like, oh, okay, well, you don't agree with me, so you must be XYZ. Oh, you don't agree with my choices, and so now you think I'm, and it's like, I have no thought about you as someone who's made the choices in your life, but I don't want you to repeat that statement to other people who don't deserve to hear that. And if we could start speaking life, and like, you want to go and make your choices, okay, go with education, like, go educate yourself, understand what you're doing to the fullest, but then be kind to other people, regardless of if they have a different choice than you do. But it was wild when I heard that story of like these kids learning, like, we need to speak life into it. And I believe like someone had said that they started to speak life to the other tree, and it started to come back alive. And that was where I was like, so it's not just dead. And I think sometimes we think that our words have no value or no hold on people. But what we find is when we're sitting with someone who's had this said to them, it's very broken, and it hurts them for so long. And it might be just like, sometimes it's like, oh, well, I wish your mom got rid of you. It's like that holds weight for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think that just, it makes me sit back and like, how can we start changing the conversation, and regardless of if we have a difference of opinion, but how do we do that and not break the other person that we're talking to just for our own beliefs? Like, we
Yeah.
need to be kind.
Yeah.
So it was wild when I heard that. I was like, that's crazy, the trees. And then I was like, but people. And I've also heard a lot of people say, like, it's very sad that we have more rights and love towards like different types of animals, but we don't have that same love and right to, like, to speak life into people. And we treat people like other human beings. We dehumanize people. And I think we see that in every industry, in the abortion industry, in the foster care system, in human trafficking and prostitution. We see it in all of these different areas where people have said, it's okay to dehumanize you. And my hope is that people would say, I'm not going to play that game.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have my beliefs, but I'm not going to play the word game of hurting people. Do you
Yeah.
have anything else you would like to add before we end?
Yeah, no, I just absolutely agree with that. I have seen people become pro-life just off of seeing the hatred that's spewed from the other
Mm-hmm.
side. And people sometimes are like, Lydia, how can you respond to the people that tell you you should be essayed or killed, and respond with hate
Yeah.
about you? And I'm like, hey, I mean, first of all, Jesus, but also because that's what our
Right.
movement is. We are a side of love. Even if a woman has an abortion, we're going to offer her love and resources. And while we think killing children should never be a choice, we are a movement of love. But we love every single human being, whether they hate us and want us dead, whether they are a preborn child. And so I really do think it is so crucial that our movement is a movement of love. And that's what we are. And I think that itself changes so many hearts and minds. And it is really so important to fill others up with encouragement, and to just show them that, hey, you are valuable regardless of your circumstances. And so I absolutely think that's so important. I agree with everything you just said.
I think we should end it there. Thank you guys for coming to our kitchen table talk. Thanks for being the fly on the wall. But if you would like to add your comments, we just ask that you do it with respect and love, and don't tear anybody down, which we know people will. But it is really important, I think, for people to understand that telling somebody else that they should be dead or should have been aborted is never the right conversation to have. It's just not good. And we're hoping that by both sides coming together and kind of saying, hey, enough is enough, we need this conversation to stop happening, that people will be able to maybe come up with a different argument that's a little bit more scientifically proven or better, but not just to hurt somebody else on the other side. Thank you so much, Lydia, for joining me. If you guys would like to follow her, you guys absolutely can. I'll be tagging all of her stuff at the bottom of the description. You guys can reach out and you can ask all the questions, and then we'll put some of the resources down for people who might be looking for it. Maybe it's counseling because you have had an abortion, or resources because you've already had one, or you're seeking one and you're wanting to see what other options are out there, or you're a parent who needs the extra love and resources to support you in your community. We'll put that all at the bottom, and if you guys have questions, reach out and we will go from there. Have a great day, everybody.
Am I good?